The world marked World Children's Day on Saturday. Each year, roughly 1.4 million children worldwide are deprived of liberty in police cells, pre-trial detention and prisons. In some cases, minors lack legal and psychological support and are often held in demeaning and even dangerous conditions. CGTN's Panorama Africa looked at the situation here in Kenya and found that while there is still room for improvement, steps are being taken to improve juvenile justice.
There are two main reasons why children find themselves on the wrong side of the law: poverty and a breakdown in social structures, conditions that are prevalent in slums across Africa. In this episode of Panorama Africa, we take a look at what happens when children get caught up in the wheels of justice.
They took me and they told me I had been charged with the possession of firearms without a license. They told me I was a member of Al-Shabaab.
On the outskirts of Nairobi lies an institution dedicated to the rehabilitation of street boys and those who've come into conflict with the law. This is where James has been living for the past year. How James got here is the story of a broken family, abuse and poverty. Born and raised in a rural county in southwestern Kenya, James's parents separated before his 11th birthday. He chose to stay with his father, but life soon changed when his father remarried and began to abuse alcohol. Alone and just 12 years old, James made the 350-kilometer bus trip to the capital city, Nairobi, in search of his mother. But with little money or information, he landed up on the streets.
If you want to sleep, you sleep in a sack. When the policemen find you, they beat you up. I felt as if this life wasn't worth living. I felt as though the world hated me.
Maybe sometimes
you are rained on, you haven't eaten for like 2 days and you are hungry. That's what actually made me start using drugs, so that I could forget all my problems.
After years of struggling and doing odd jobs in construction, James was recruited into crime at the age of 15 by a man we shall call Mr. M.
He told me that he could help me leave this job and get another one. He said that he helps boys like me and can get me a job that pays me double.
Mr. M gave James more money than he'd ever seen. He rented him a new apartment complete with furniture and visited James regularly with parcels of food. One evening, Mr. M brought something else too.
In the bag, there was a gun.
He told James he would need to learn how to use it.
I sat back and weighed my options, and I figured I might as well team up with him. I didn't have any choice. He had given me food, everything I needed, money. He had given me a good life. I thought about the street life and realized I can't go back. So he told me I would go for training. We went all the way to Mogadishu. I wasn't alone. There were other boys, 26 of us.
When the boys returned to Nairobi, they got to work selling drugs and guns and hijacking expensive vehicles. James was earning about $300 a day. But his days of carjacking and gun running ended in bloodshed.
There was a confrontation and gunshots, and 3 boys died as I watched. So that's what made me see that this was not a good life.
James decided to leave the criminal underworld. He sought assistance from a priest who convinced him that if he surrendered the guns, all would be well. Instead, James was arrested by Kenya's anti-terror police unit and charged with possession of a firearm without a license and involvement in terrorist activities. James was still a teenager, but with no documents to prove this, he was detained alongside adults in a police cell. His case was heard in an adult court. He had no legal representation and was advised by police officers to plead guilty, even though he didn't fully understand the charges against him. James's experience with the police and the courts was in direct violation of established international law on the rights of children. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, or CRC, is an international treaty established to protect the rights of children across the world. It also provides key guidelines on children in conflict with the law. For example, Article 37 states that the arrest, detention or imprisonment of a child shall be used as a measure of last resort and for the shortest appropriate period of time. And every child deprived of liberty should be separated from adults. Article 40 states that youth involved in the justice procedure should receive legal representation and a speedy, impartial trial. Now, Kenya is a signatory to this convention and others, but sometimes there is a gap between policy and practice, something that juvenile justice advocates are fighting to change. Advocate Elizabeth Njambi runs an organization called Wakilisha, meaning legal representation in Swahili. The organization links young offenders with a network of lawyers who represent them on a pro bono basis.
Some courts have tried to have in place pro bono mechanisms whereby advocates can sign up, but it's lacking in a majority of the courts in Kenya. So you'll find most children in conflict with the law. In fact, statistics say 80% of children in conflict with the law lack access to legal representation. 80%.
In James's case, a magistrate ordered an age assessment which found he was only 16. His case was moved from the High Court to the Children's Court. He was given a lawyer and tried as a minor. The age assessment saved him. Had he been treated as an adult, James would have faced up to 10 years in prison for the firearm offense and a further 20 years, if not a life sentence, for his alleged involvement in terror activities. James spent 8 months at a detention facility for boys, an experience he described as rife with fighting among fellow detainees. But thanks to the intervention of juvenile justice advocates from Italian NGO, the European Committee for Training and Agriculture, or CEFA, he is now in a diversion program at this rehabilitation farm.
This is someone who is still developing into adulthood. So we are looking at him like even this is someone who can still be helped to be given a second chance in life. So like we are trying to give them like even not just punishing them, but also helping them to understand that I committed a crime, and maybe like even I need to take responsibility.
This progressive stance on rehabilitation and alternatives to formal incarceration is supported at the highest levels of Kenya's prison service.
We look at these institutions as correction centers, mostly for the juvenile. We have never looked at them as jails or institutions for destruction, but institutions for correction, so that they can find their way out, they can find their focus. It's just that a child who has lost focus, but this child can be given another chance.
According to the 2017 United Nations Global Study on Children Deprived of Liberty, most children find themselves in detention due to a lack of social support systems and poor social and economic conditions, including poverty. Armed conflicts and natural disasters have also led to many children being separated from their family units and ending up in detention. The report further states that minors with links to criminal and terrorist gangs and those involved in sexual offences usually end up in custody. Some are also arrested during security sweeps. Kenya's Prison Services partnership with Italian NGO CEFA sees local social workers help juvenile offenders learn how to take responsibility for their actions while planning for their futures.
Counseling has helped a lot with the boy because he was able to open up and a family reconciliation was done because he was not in good terms with the father, because he was blaming the father for whatever he was going through at that moment. But now I hear he's doing very well.
James is now 19 years old. In about a year, he'll be free to leave this farm and pursue his own dreams. Though his life has changed remarkably, he is still bitter with the police officers who arrested him.
It would have been better for them to understand the reason behind my involvement in crime, to investigate my story, understand my problems, and help me find a solution. You can't just arrest and throw someone into the cells. That doesn't help at all. Prison is not a good place.
James has had a tough life, but he is getting a second chance here. It's an example of the potential future of juvenile justice, where alternatives to criminal prosecution adopt a more holistic approach to rehabilitation while upskilling youth and allowing them a chance to contribute positively to society. Lindy Mtongana, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.